Hi again, it's Lucy Bond here. For this second video, I wanted to talk about how to prioritize our life and time in general. So in the first video, we looked at how to set up our days for maximum success. And kind of one of the things that, I took for granted or didn't have the time to explore was actually how do you set your priorities? So let's say if you've got a productivity system such as Todoist, where you might use priority tags like P1, P2, or P3 to organize your day, then actually where do these priorities come from? And priority setting is really something that people have asked me a lot about and is a consistent challenge, even for people who are really into productivity. The reason for this is that actually prioritizing is really, really hard. Most people kind of take it for granted, but it's actually the hardest step of productivity. So today I'll go into some quick tips into how I prioritize different areas of my life and also troubleshoot, any issues or problems that might come up with prioritizing. Because prioritizing is not just an operational construct, it also comes, I think, with a lot of mindset baggage and challenges that we can talk a bit about. So first of all, in terms of prioritizing, your work or your life in general, for me, the first things that I turn to when I do any prioritizing work are exercises called the Wheel of Life. So this is an example that is from my business coach, Rena Pomeroy. And so it's copyrighted to hers. Unfortunately, I can't share it. But if you Google Wheel of Life, you'll just find tons of examples of these like little spider diagrams. And I find them so useful because, again, as a scientist, I'm just a fan of anything that externalizes, I guess, your mindset or your productivity systems and also enables you to kind of put quantitative measures around it. So the principles behind a wheel of life is that you've got different categories of your life and then you rank it from 0 to 10 and then you put like a little star where it is and then it makes the spider diagram and you can really easily see where in life you feel you're performing well or what is important to you. And so, for example, in this particular wheel of life, this is a personal wheel of life. So I would encourage you to always start with a personal wheel of life. So we got things like career, money, health, friends and family, significant other, personal growth, fun, recreation, physical environment. But you can put anything you want in there. So I really encourage you to really think of headings that appeal to you. So for example, fun and recreation, especially right now during coronavirus time, might be more like rest or emotional well-being, because it's not like we can have tons of fun or recreation outside of the house. Physical environment, it might be things like home or, DIY or, how pleasing your environment is. And I will probably do these Wheel of Lives, every month, so every other month. So here you can see I can put the dates and I've done them in different colors. And so I can just see where I'm tracking or how I feel about each area of my life. And in terms of how to set priorities based on that, you can kind of do it two ways. So either you can see something has a high score and it is a priority to you and it remains a priority. So here are a few things that I've highlighted last month were things like career, money, and physical environment, because I've just moved into a new house. So either these are things that I want to maintain my scores in, or sometimes there are areas where I realize like the score is quite low, or I'm self-assessing quite low. So for me, fun and recreation tends to be one of the ones where I assess myself quite low. And so for a month or two, I might have a priority, to raise that number, let's say from 6 to 8. And, that might seem like very quantitative, but actually it's quite a good anchor to be like, okay, I want to do better in the fun and recreation area of my life. What are some practical tips or things that I can do to actually see that change? And so, yeah, you can either look at areas where you want to maintain or areas where you want to grow. And that can help you kind of see your priorities. And so I would suggest, out of a wheel of life, let's say that has like 8 or 9 quadrants, maybe choose 1 or 2 priorities. And you might see some areas are related to each other. So I find for me, personal growth and fun and recreation tend to be quite tightly linked because spirituality and meditating is kind of one of my main hobbies. And so they kind of go together. So these are for the life, kind of wheel of life prioritization systems. But you can also do one for business. So this one is very much a freelance type business one. But if you're an academic, I'll go into how you might be able to use this. So in this wheel of life, we've got things such as clients, growth, revenue, financial organization, CEO, confidence in what you do, elevator pitch. And so you can have different versions. So really, it's up to your own business what you put in it. So you might have something like operations or marketing or visibility. And if you're an academic, really you need to put the different areas, let's say, of your job that could be priorities. And this is where, in terms of prioritization, the main topic of this video, you need to be clear about what priorities before you even do the prioritization, you even need to be clear about the subset of things you might be looking at. And so let's say if you're an employee, I would really recommend you to go back to your job description and actually get really clear on what are the things that you could be doing. So let's say for an academic, a lot of your performance reviews or job descriptions might be about writing papers, getting grants, going to conferences, doing presentations, successful student supervision, etc. And if you're a PhD student or an employee, I would also really encourage you to go to your supervisor or your boss just to clarify these areas of responsibility, because one of the main tripping points of prioritizing is actually when you're not clear on the subset of things you're working with in the first place. So this is really, the first step. If you can do a wheel of life and actually get some headings in there that are meaningful and useful, then that's the first step to actually prioritizing what you do. And for the business wheel of life, I would actually do the same thing, kind of rank myself. And again, there's areas that either tend to be correlated or have slight trade-offs. And so, for example, for me, I always find that kind of clients and CEO tend to have a bit of a trade-off. So if in a month, a certain month, I spend a lot of time on client work, then I find that obviously I spend less time as a CEO of my business doing, that strategic visioning. And so that might have to become a priority, for the next month, because I've kind of left that off the wayside. So this is like a great tool to set priorities, and I would do it probably every month and definitely every quarter, because in terms of prioritizing broad areas of your life, it does take a little bit of time to see results. It's not like something like, oh, this week my priority is health, and next week my priority is like recreation, because you won't see any results if you don't give yourself enough time to work on these priorities. So definitely, monthly priority and or quarterly. And how do you actually action these priorities into your daily productivity system? So once you're clear on either the areas that you want to maintain or improve on, so let's say for me, personally, health is a huge priority at the moment. And then in terms of my business, things like financial steadiness are always a big priority, and at the moment, clients. And so things like operations marketing, they're running pretty well, so they're not a priority. And so because I know what these broad categories are, when I do my prioritization for the day in Todoist, I know, let's say if I've got like health related tasks, then I'll do them first. And then if I've got client related tasks, then I'll do them second. And then if I've got any, financial management tasks, such as sending invoices, here I've got, things about formatting invoices in QuickBooks, then I already know what is like P1, P2, and P3. So you can see how it translates very quickly into like a practical operational system. I also want to quickly touch on some of the really common difficulties with prioritizing. The first one is being a perfectionist and trying to do everything by yourself. And especially with academics, what I've seen is that people overcommit and find themselves completely unable to prioritize because they want to do everything. Part of prioritization is that you say yes to some areas and you say no or later to the other ones. And so you need to make that commitment that you can't be good at everything and you just can't be on top of your game everywhere. You kind of have to choose your battles. And I know for people who are high achievers and perfectionists, that can actually be a huge mindset challenge. But here I would say you just learn by doing. So just, try to focus on one area. Because if you think that you've got 10 units of energy, would you rather put these 10 units of energy into one thing and advance 10 steps in a certain direction? Or would you rather do +1 in each of these areas and, increase? So here, most people would just prefer to choose one or two directions and really see a very distinct change. But again, it's your personal decision whether you want to kind of put your energy across all these areas and probably not see a measurable result, or if you just want to focus. There again, being an overachiever, being a perfectionist can be a hindrance. The second one is being a people pleaser. So the reality is that when you prioritize things and deprioritize the other things, you might piss off people. Or because their priorities are different to yours, let's say if you're really focusing on health, you might have to, let's say, not have as many meetings in the evening, or you might not be able to see friends as often. Or if your priority is fun and recreation, then you're probably just going to have to put some really clear boundaries around your work. And so part of having these priorities is communicating them with other people in a way that they understand, and having clear boundaries and being ready to risk their disapproval, or at least, not always being in their good books. The reality is that I find when I communicate my priorities very clearly to people, most of the time they have no problem with it, and actually they're quite impressed, or they have a certain sense of admiration. But this is definitely one of the fears that can kick in when you're trying to prioritize, because you're scared of what people might say. But here, I invite you to, demonstrate some leadership and actually show the way by example, because you can actually teach other people a lot about prioritizing by being really clear on your own priorities. I'm going to keep this video here because I just want to keep these little daily bites really short and snappy, but I hope that you found this guide to prioritizing useful, and that it's going to help you set you up for your most productive days.